Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I want to welcome everyone to boot camp this morning. This is a Saturday morning here, and we pulled the trigger on another fascinating video. This is one that probably affects everyone, everywhere, at one time or another, and that's the subject of suffering. Well, if you haven't suffered, just hold on, because sooner or later you will. And we're going to give some of the reasons why you suffer from the Christian perspective. Now remember, this is going to be from the Christian perspective. This is what Christians believe about suffering. This is what I taught. This is what I practiced most of my life. This is what you probably, if you're a Christian, are practicing right now. So it's an interesting subject, and it's probably one of the subjects that led more people into atheism than any other doctrine in the Bible. I'm sure that more people left the Word of God because of looking around and looking out in the world and seeing all this suffering and seeing a God that seemingly does absolutely nothing in most instances to alleviate the problem. You know, there's always the question that comes up, why do infants and children suffer? Why do they get cancers? Why do we get car wrecks? Why does somebody lose their life at such a young age? Why does somebody who's extremely old suffer for months and months and months before they die in excruciating pain? You know, all these things are a product of probably these three categories that I'm going to list for you. But once more, you got to realize that we're human beings, we're flesh and blood. We live in a world that's you're going to suffer in this world. You know, there's no way to get around it. Sooner or later, you're going to suffer in this world, and you got to come to that fact. I mean, that's part of living here on this planet. You're not a spiritual being. You're subject to all the laws of nature, that, you know, sickness, disease, whatever, accidents, you know, broken bones. You're just open to all these things. So as we get started, I want to talk to you about, I guess, probably one of the books that open with the perspective on suffering is the book of Job. Now, just a little background on Job. You know, Job was a righteous man, the scriptures say. Job had a family that maybe his sons and daughters weren't so righteous. I mean, he always had to make reparation for them. He was interceding on their behalf. They were having parties and probably drunkenness, whatever else that was going on. But he was a very rich man as well. Now, he had cattle, he had all kinds of things, you know. He was very, 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 very rich. And the story goes on to say that, you know, there was a day, I'll read it to you from the Word of God, the scriptures, the Christian scriptures. Now there was a day, and I'll pick up in verse 6, because before that it just tells about what I just introduced you to. But in verse 6 it says, in chapter 1, first opening chapter, it says, "Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came among them." And they have this dialogue back and forth. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but there's a dialogue back and forth between Satan and God. And they're talking about, you know, hey, God says to him, you know, he's kind of, it's like he's boasting, and he says, "Have you seen my servant Job? You know, he's so righteous." And Satan comes up with the idea, yeah, you know, he's righteous because what? You bless him all the time. I mean, you know, you look how rich he is. I mean, look how he is. You know, why wouldn't he be? You keep blessing him. So there's this dialogue back and forth, and before you know it, there's this contest, and Job is unaware of this. Believe he's sitting there, he's not aware of what's going on in the spiritual realm, right? This contest is being set up for him, and Satan says, "Okay, you know what? If you touch his bone, touch his flesh and bone, he's going to curse you." And the Lord said, "Okay, you do it. I'm not going to do it. You do it. But don't kill him." All right? Basically, that's interpreting the scripture, what it says, what the meaning is. It's not exactly what it said. But anyway, that's what the meaning, the gist of the whole thing is. So it goes on, and he loses his family, he loses all his wealth, and then he's stricken with sickness, boils. So he's losing family, he's losing his relationships. Then he's losing his economic stature, his money, his business, more or less. He lost his business, and now he's stricken with sickness. All these things, okay. And he holds fast. That's where the story ends. He holds fast, and as a result of this trial that he goes through, he's rewarded, again with wealth and family and all the things that he lost, So anyway, that's quite an interesting story, and it's quite an interesting thing to consider. It's amazing. It's amazing that the man would go through so much trouble. It's amazing in there too that his wife came to him and said, "Job, just curse God." It's like she was acting on Satan's behalf. Just curse God and die. Forget about this. But he said no. And even he had 3 friends that came and said, "Hey, you know what? All these things befell you. There's got to be something wrong with you. You must be doing something wrong." I mean. And it was none of these things. So that's the first thing in our mind when something happens to us. We think, well, geez, I must have done something wrong. Well, possibly you didn't do anything wrong. It's just one of these maybe tests that you're going to have to go through. And you're going to go through plenty of them, believe me. In this world, you're going to go through plenty of them. Sickness is the big one. Finances. Just about everybody suffers some kind of problem with finances at one time or another. I know in my life I suffered plenty with finances in the beginning of it. It's like a plague, because you have to learn the economic system, and you have to learn how to get through it. And then there's the disease that comes, and everybody, as you start approaching, like myself, the last quarter of your life, you start getting these diseases. I mean, whether it's diabetes or blood pressure or a heart problem or whatever it is, these things are going to come. They're going to come, because you know what? You're not going to live forever. So you're going to have to suffer some of these things. So this is the reason why I'm making this video. Now, we see in there that you suffer some things from the spiritual realm. And that's a fact. But I'll give you a couple of more. You also suffer from your own hands. And I'm going to put that one first, because that's probably a big one. You suffer more from yourself, from the decisions you make in life, than any other thing, just about. You could live probably a whole lot better if you would just quit doing things to yourself. Now, what do I mean by doing things to myself? Living a life that's kind of unrestricted. You eat all this processed garbage that they got today. That's all it is. I mean, you go down, you look in Walmart. I'm not just trying to pick on Walmart, because every store is the same. But you go in these stores and you look in the main aisles, and you'll see all these boxed foods and all these canned foods. I challenge you, just pick up a box. Look on the back and read the ingredients in that box. There's 43 different kinds of crap that's put into that box of that stuff that you're going to eat. and it's been sitting on that shelf for who knows how long. I mean, some of it's dated, but still, all this is just chemicals, chemicals, chemicals. You look along the edges of the store, and that's where you're going to find the fresh meat, the produce, you know, the milks, the vegetables. All that's along the outside of the store, the perimeter of the store. And inside is all this garbage that they're selling. And people go in for the garbage. You know, if you got a limited income, you can't very well eat halal food, you know, because it's expensive. It costs you more to eat even organic. It costs you more. And if you got just a certain amount on your budget that you got to spend every month, you're almost forced in this economy to eat garbage. And I know people that raise their family on macaroni and cheese. Can you imagine that? And you wonder why sometime down the line, why they're sick. Why are they sick? Why are they getting sick? Why they got these diseases? Well, guess what? They never got the nutrition that they should have got. I mean, and that's probably no fault of the person that was doing the feeding of that stuff, but it's a real problem, a serious problem in this country with nutrition. I noticed as I traveled, and I traveled a pretty good bit, but mostly in South America, I noticed that people eat different there. Refrigeration isn't a priority. People have a refrigerator, but they still traditionally go to markets and they buy fresh vegetables. They buy fresh fish that was just caught. Maybe that fish was caught the night before, and in the morning it's sold. It's not frozen and sitting on the shelf for 6 months before you buy it. So you eat a lot healthier. The people seem to be a lot healthier. I seen them chug. They were chugging. I think it's called panela. But anyway, it's sugar cane made into a brick, and then they chop that brick up and crumble it up and add it with water, and they boil it and they make a drink out of it. It's just sugar water. Now, if sugar is the cause of diabetes, and I think it's the white sugar that's the cause of all these things. But anyway, this cane sugar that they made, kids drank it. Doesn't seem to have the effect. They don't have the rates of diabetes there that they got here in this country. Everybody here is insulin, or some kind of tablet, you know. I mean, you go to a doctor, the doctor feels like he failed you if he doesn't give you some kind of a pill before you leave. Because if you got a problem and you come to him, oh, well, I'll just reach in my bag and I got some kind of a magical cure for you on that. But it doesn't cure anything. It's just you're going to be dependent on that drug. And that's a sad way to do medicine, but that's the way it's done here in the West. It's not nutritional. It's biochemical, trying to alter your body's chemistry to fix and alleviate the problems, and that's not a good way to go. Okay, so we get off of that subject. You suffer by your own hand, but you suffer from other people too. If you ever noticed that, going down the highway, I mean, you know, I had friends just a year or two ago, people I knew for 20 years. Good person, good pastor, started a church. In the beginning of that church, I helped him found that church, and we used to pray all the time. And he used to come over to my house because I was taking some external studies in my graduate program, and he was coming over and he was testing me, making sure that I was getting a legitimate test. So he would bring the tests, and he would sit there and we would talk, you know, for maybe an hour or so. And I used to go to his church, so we were good friends. And him and his wife were going down the road. They lived up in North Alabama, and I think they had a house in southern Alabama right there. And driving down probably a narrow country road, and a tractor trailer semi run in and hit him, killed him and his wife. Who would think that that was coming? Now, how did he suffer from that? He suffered from that. He lost his life because maybe somebody wasn't paying attention and went over the line and hit him. Now, you suffer from the hands of other people. Believe that. I know a lot of you said, well, why did you do that? You caused some harm to me. That's just part of the life of living in this world that we're in. So did some spiritual entity have something to do with that? Who knows? But anyway, you suffer from the hands of other people. We know that the government can make laws that cause you to suffer. Look around the world, or they're putting sanctions on countries. And sanctions are actually an act of war, but they're causing people to starve, right? The government is selling weapons to countries that are bombing other territories and countries, and that's just going on daily in our world. So you suffer at the hands of other people. Let me read you something out of the book of Ephesians. It's a verse, short verse, not very long. This is Ephesians chapter 6. This is the Christian scriptures, the New Testament. So learn something about Christian scriptures. If you're a Muslim, learn something about Christian scriptures, because this is what you're going to be confronted with. These kinds of things. I mean, I don't know how you're going to do dawah. I'm going to do dawah to Christians. Yeah, you know what? They're going to tear you to pieces, most of them, if they're learned. You're not going to do any dawah. You're going to make yourself look silly. So learn what they know. That's the only way you're going to reach a Christian. So chapter 6, verse 12. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. Remember I told you? We just read Job. But against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world. Oh, let me read that again because I kind of stumbled. Rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Now, that's pretty much what we've seen in the book of Job. I mean, there were some... Bart Ehrman seems to think that that wasn't really the devil, that was like an ambassador, or some kind of a council member. He thinks that that came to God because the devil was actually, cast out of heaven, and wouldn't have got back in to make it up to the throne. So this was another, like a council member or something like that were setting up this test with Job. So I don't know. I mean, you can debate anything and you can say anything. You can prove anything from the Bible. Prove anything. So, but Bart Ehrman, this was one of the things, and a lot of people are probably listening to this, maybe Bart Ehrman fans, because he has a lot to say. It's a lot of learned information on the New Testament. I think I disagree with this right here on what he says. I think it might have been Satan that got up there. I think that I don't think they would really keep him out. They cast him out as far as his position and what he was doing before, but I think he could have probably went back and forth, and in the case of Job, he really seems to have done that. So, this is no reason to lose your faith, because you look out in the world that's run by natural forces. There's natural forces that are acting upon you out in the real world, and it's no reason to lose your faith in God, because He doesn't somehow make everything perfect for you. That's part of the fall in the garden. He stopped making everything perfect for you and started to subject you to tilling the earth to feed yourself and all these other things. So He started to subject you to natural forces. And part of that is sickness. part of that is disease and all these other things and the forces that control your life. So, you know, as you think about these things, it's just a sad situation, and you look in the world, and we try to help out. We try to help these people that are in need, because if you're hungry, you're suffering, right? And we try to leave that hunger, that suffering. If you're financially in trouble, we try to alleviate that trouble, right? Most of us do anyway. I mean, you know, we got a government that's well, now people say, well, that's communism, Marxism, socialism. You can't help nobody. You know, they got to grovel through the dirt like a snake. Well, we collect hundreds of trillions of dollars a year and send arms and money across the world. And our own people here in this country are suffering from economic problems. And I want you to reconsider your position, because if you're a Christian and you're watching this, reconsider your position, because the government giving some money and a few dollars and whatever help they give to poor people is not socialism, it's not capitalism, it's humanitarian efforts. And what you're doing is you're losing your humanitarian efforts, and you're turning the whole thing over to these catchphrases like socialism, Marxism. You know, hey, well, the whole country's going to be socialized, and they're going to take all your wealth and all this and that. Why? Because they helped a few people, and they didn't sell $150 billion worth of arms to Saudi Arabia so they could bomb Yemen. I mean, is that the way your thinking is? Is that what you think? Then you're crazy. I'll tell you what, you're cuckoo. Believe it. You know? Well, I said enough. I hope you got the gist. It's a deep subject. You could teach probably for a long time on all the aspects of suffering. You just can't cover this too well in 15 or 20 minutes, but a lot of people out there that are watching this, you went through some of these things. You suffered. You know you suffered. You know it wasn't from your own fault. You know, you worshiped God. You were steady, steadfast, and still you got that cancer, or still you got that heart problem, or whatever else. So you suffered because of it. So it wasn't your fault. It's just something you're going to go through. I tell you, can God just take it away like that? You bet. And we believe that too. We believe in certain cases for certain people, you pray and God could remove that. And I have seen that before in my life. I have seen people get a test, and you know, all the tests were on the negative side. Thinking of a friend of mine right now who couldn't have kids for some reason or another. Him and his wife, they couldn't have kids. And the doctor said, well, it's the way it is. You can't have kids. You might want to think about adopting. And guess what happened? They started to have kids. So they're not always right. You know, medical science is not always right. God can intervene, and God can do what he wants. So keep that in mind, and that's the hope that we have. The hope is not in doctors, believe me, because doctors know so very little that if you actually knew how little they know, you probably wouldn't go to them. But they know so little, and their treatments are potentially harmful. But when God treats you, there's no harm to it. I mean, he knows exactly your problem, so he knows exactly how to fix it. Keep that in mind. As you go through your day and as you go through your week, these things should be in the forefront of your mind that, you know, hey, I'm going to suffer. I know it. It's not fatalism, you know. It's just I'm going to try to live my life the best that I can. And eventually, guess what? You're going to die. And that's the ultimate, because that's the way we're designed. Once that sin occurred in the garden, guess what? That sin was that you're going to die. Before that, no. After the sin, now you're going to die. Keep all these things in mind. If you got a question, you can write me at americanislam.ed at gmail.com or americanislam.ed at yahoo.com. You have a good day. Stay safe. Wear your masks in crowds. Don't cough in people's faces. If you're sick, don't go out somewhere. Don't go to work, because you're just going to get somebody else sick. And stay safe. Assalamu alaikum, friends.